What is up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of our NFL DFS DraftKings Advice videos, this time for Week 11. I'm your host, Justin Bales, joined by Sam Sherman. We have a two-man pod. Ben couldn't get on this week, but Sam, how are you doing?
Doing well. I don't know how much we want to go over, but last week's slate was ridiculous. Anyone wants a good laugh? I swapped out Fournette from my main lineup 10 minutes before lock.
That is atrocious.
Last week it is all obviously hindsight. I don't regret, because at the time I was like, I'd rather just get pass catchers. Obviously no one could call the 4 TD game, but that was just hilarious. At one point I was like, all right, just score 5. I just don't even care. It was just absurd.
Well, I did that. I believe it was 2 weeks ago. I was on Jonathan Taylor in my lineup for, I think, since Tuesday. He was a guy that I had slotted into my lineup along with, that was when they played the Bills, right? Mm-hmm. I had Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs, who obviously caught 2 touchdowns, and then Jonathan Taylor as the run back. And on Sunday morning, when I created my actual core, I pulled all of that and went with, I think, a Brady stack, and boy, was it not good.
Yeah, that same week I had Jonathan Taylor. I had Josh Allen without Diggs, which is awesome. I love wasting a nice 50 bomb. Yeah, but it is what it is. I think this week is super interesting. I don't know about you, just overall before we get into the position by position. I think cash this week is kind of difficult. I think there's clear running back. There's so many cheap running back options that I think it's interesting. I think there's no. I don't know if you disagree. I don't think there's one obvious quarterback for cash. I think there's 3 viable ones, but which I think I like. I like when it's not the chalkiest cash build of all time, but that just
I agree with you. I think even at running back where you kind of think where people are going, very clearly people are playing Jonathan Taylor, right?
Right.
You don't not play him against Houston. But when you think about who else you're going to play, there's just a ton of guys that jump into the conversation. Do you pay up for Alexander Mattison? Do you go down to someone like Antonio Gibson? Do you trust any of the Philadelphia guys? Jamal Williams is down at 5,400. Eli Mitchell is only 6K, so it's not like he's that much more expensive. There's just so many good options, I think, on this particular slate that it's kind of difficult to know exactly where people are going, even though you kind of have the sense that the chalk 2 are essentially going to be Jonathan Taylor and Jamal Williams. But right. Who's the third? Who are you using in the flex? Because there's probably 10 guys that you actually can use, right?
Yeah, I was just saying, I like James Conner. If he gets super popular, that makes me way less interested. But yeah, Connor, Darrell Henderson, I know he's going to hurt. Eli Mitchell, like you mentioned, Gibson, Madison. I love where DraftKings put Madison. I do. I think it's. Yeah. I love that they put him at 76, and because he's still a smash play, but people won't own him because he's not the backup 5,200 or something.
Yeah, I know. The other thing is, I guess tight end is going to be extremely chalky. You obviously have Moreau that clearly you just plug him in at 2,700, you move on. But the other thing is receiver, you kind of need to make this decision now because you have guys like Cooper Kupp in really good matchups where, similar to Taylor, it could blow out. And you're kind of in this weird spot where you need to pay up and you can't pay up for everyone. So do you pay up at receiver, get guys like Cooper Kupp, or do you pay down at receiver where the value isn't as good? But obviously, it feels like Jonathan Taylor's kind of the smash spot. But at the same time, you can pay down and you get the valuable running backs underneath Taylor. You get guys like Jamal Williams. Where at receiver, I don't know if you think there's anyone that's an absolute must that's, around under 5,000 or anything. I think there's guys like Josh Reynolds, but I wouldn't expect him to really get that much ownership.
I agree. I have him projected for right now. I have him at, it could always go up. And obviously also, if anyone doesn't know, you should, a lot of sites and ours, it's similar. When I have ownership up, that's obviously more geared towards tournaments. So I have Josh Reynolds 6 or 7%, but in cash, I agree with you. I could see him getting 10 or 15, but no, he's not going to be I would be willing to guess Moreau and cash will be 70% owned.
I was thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking, man, probably upwards of 70, 75.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I'm in the middle of almost done from. I'll publish after we finish up here on my Friday article, and I was like basically saying, if you want just leverage at all, just literally just don't play Foster Moreau in tournaments, and you have leverage at tight end. That's like all you have to do.
You could even
or double
right underneath him is Brevin Jordan, who, don't get me wrong, Moreau's a significantly better player, but they're essentially the same price tag, and Jordan does have some upside. I believe he scored like 11 fantasy points. He caught a touchdown against the Jets last week. I mean, that's just an immediate pivot. That's not even like moving off of Moreau for someone like Mark Andrews or something. That's literally the exact same price tag. And if he outscores Moreau, you just beat like probably minimum 60% of the field, right?
And I mean, Bales, I can't believe you didn't mention James O'Shaughnessy, your favorite player.
I actually do like James O'Shaughnessy this weekend. I think he's in a good spot.
I do too. Yeah.
2,600. It's so cheap too. I mean, he's coming off of a good game too. I mean, okay, take out Brevin Jordan, throw that away. James O'Shaughnessy is the direct pivot off of Moreau.
Yeah.
But I mean, we should really get this into the position by position, kind of the way that we actually do this. We will go over each position, talk about guys that we like, go over some stacks at the end, maybe give you a bold call. Before we do get started, if you enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. You can turn on the notifications by clicking the little bell, which then will, I guess it sends you a message every time that we publish a video. That's for NBA, props, NFL, all of it. It's all under this channel. Leave any comments that you have below. Sam and I can answer any questions or anything that you have throughout the week. I know it's Friday, so we're actually relatively closer to Sunday compared to the usual, I believe, Thursday that we record this, sometimes Wednesday. So we have more information at this point, but still, any questions you have, we will answer throughout the day. And then as you can see on the little ticker on the screen, you can get all of our core plays, Sam's projections, which have been outstanding, into our premium Discord. We also have premium articles that can be found at dfskarma.com/pricing. We also have a free chat, Discord chat that you can get into at chatdfs.com. All the links that you could possibly need are in the description below. So just click the little show more and you will find them all. But we can start getting into the position by position here. Sam, why don't you start us off at quarterback?
Yeah. So in terms of, cash, like we opened up, I don't think it's as obvious as normal. I think Brady, I have ranked as number one. I think he'll probably be the most popular, him and Herbert, I assume. Derek Carr is getting a lot of traction. I like Derek Carr. I like that they're throwing. Everyone's kind of not really a secret anymore. He has not looked as good ever since that horrific thing that happened with Ruggs, and he's been off the field because he kind of spread the field out. But I think Carr is in a good spot. I think Taylor Heineke is cash playable. I'm not saying I'm going to lock him in there. I like him for tournaments too. But I think besides the obvious of like Brady, Herbert, those are good plays, I really like Heineke. If Carr stays under like 7-8% or so, I like him. But I mean, I'll just steal your guy because I'm always a hater. I mean, I don't understand why Lamar is not going to be more owned. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like,
Steelers D sucks. It's not
good. In a divisional game where essentially the Steelers are playing for their playoff lives. They're kind of at a point where they more or less need to win these games. And Baltimore is playing for first in the division. The Bengals, I believe, are only one game out of that.
Yep.
I mean, it makes sense to use Lamar in a game where.
Yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah, Baltimore's not taking their their foot off the gas. And Pittsburgh, even they're not going to play poorly enough in this type of a situation where the Ravens are even given a chance to kind of stop their offense. It's going to all run through Lamar. I agree with that.
I mean, I just think it's interesting. I mean, the total is low, but I mean, the Pittsburgh defense, I mean, they rank, in terms of, EPA. Like, so first of all, the teams both play fat. The Ravens have averaged the most plays per game in the league. Pittsburgh's number 9. You have Ben and Hines. I get that's kind of a narrative, but he is definitely better at home. And, Ben is dust and he sucks and he throws all these picks and he's immobile. But like Dante Johnson still goes off all the time and he gets like 12 targets a game. I think Claypool is really sneaky pivot. Frymouth is good. And I mean, on the Baltimore side of the ball, you have Marquise Brown, who's getting 12 targets a game. You have Mark Andrews. So I think Lamar and his usage is just so good. I mean, the Steelers, I know they're historically quote unquote good. I mean, they rank in the bottom third in DVOA versus the rush. And we know how much Lamar rushes. So I think Lamar is awesome. You can pay up to him. I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts on playing either Carr or Heineke in cash. I like them both for tournaments, but I don't know. It's tough to trust Derek Carr, who could be high owned in cash games because he loves to fail.
Yeah, so you more or less outlined this basically the exact same way that I would have. I think Lamar Jackson's going under owned, which makes him a really good tournament option if you want to use him in cash. I don't really have any issues. My number one option, it has to be Tom Brady. Why is he priced so low? Is one of the big things. And if your argument is, oh, he's playing on the road and he just hasn't been good on the road. I mean, he hasn't been as good on the road. He's still averaging like 20 fantasy points a game on the road and gets the matchup against Atlanta. Like, didn't earlier in the season he dropped 30 plus against Atlanta? And
wasn't the team he threw 5 touchdowns against? And they and Ryan. I don't know if it was 5, but I know wasn't the same game. Also, the Falcons had like 2 pick sixes in the last like 2 minutes, and the Bucks. I don't know. Either way, the Falcons stop literally no one. Like it doesn't. Yeah, they stop no one.
It's such a good spot, and when you get at this point in the season, right, we're close to the playoffs, which means teams are going to have any struggling player that they need for the playoffs, such as Tom Brady. They're going to put them in every position they can to succeed, to put them in a get-right spot. This is a get-right spot. The Atlanta's defense cannot stop him. Tom Brady needs more road, quote-unquote, confidence because he hasn't been as good on the road. They're just going to let him absolutely light up this defense to get ready for the playoffs. That would be the way that I see it anyway. I think he's the number one option. I agree with what you said about Herbert. I also came in here thinking that I was kind of on the wrong side of things, but I thought that either Derek Carr or Taylor Heineke both can be used in cash games, depending on how much you need the salary, because there are so many good options at other positions. And that game is just going to be, they're going to have so many plays. Both teams, I expect, they're going to score the ball. Neither team is good against the pass. Washington's given up the most air yards this season. They haven't really given up a ton of yak, but does it really matter when you have Derek Carr airing it out to guys like Deshaun Jackson now? And then on the other side, Las Vegas just also isn't a defense that I believe is really going to stop anyone. My only concern with the two is that, one, obviously Antonio Gibson just got as many carries as he could handle last week. Wouldn't be shocked if they do it again. And two, before their last game, I believe it was on Thanksgiving, right, when they played the Cowboys, Las Vegas said that they want to get Josh Jacobs the ball more. And then I think he had 22 carries or something. So I don't know what's
going on. Yeah, I mean, okay. We just clear one thing up? Does Josh Jacobs just suck, or does he not suck? I think he blows.
I don't think he's that bad. I don't think the Raiders are really using him the way that they should have when he came out of college. Like, I don't know. He never seemed as the guy that was going to carry the ball 20 plus times without seeing that many targets. I didn't get that feel from him as a prospect, but that's kind of what they turned him into, right?
Yeah, I mean, my only thing I would say, I think the Washington D is not, obviously it's bad. I think their rush D, and it's all relative, is much better than the pass. Again, like I said, it's relative. I mean, what I like about the Raiders and Carr, and then we can probably move on, is the fact that just their pass rate over expectation, they've been passing a lot more than they have earlier in the season. It doesn't always grade out to success, but I don't know. I mean, there's just so many ways you can, because the entire Raiders team is just so cheap. And not to mention, no one's going to own Terry McLaurin. So I don't know. It is tough to trust Carr in like a cash game where you're trying to just get, a decent median, and Carr is just always ripe for a 3 pick or, so. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you probably spend up to at least Brady here, but other guys that I do, there's one other guy that I guess really sticks out in tournaments, and it's more or less just like a complete leverage play where everyone plays Jonathan Taylor. You can just go Carson Wentz. Houston's not good at all defensively. They don't blitz, so Wentz really isn't going to be under pressure. And when you look at what he did to them in their last game, he only had 20 pass attempts, scored 17 fantasy points. And now when you have Tyrod Taylor coming back, Houston's offense should look more lively. I don't necessarily know if they keep it that close, but at least it gives Carson Wentz the ability to throw the ball. And it's just a clear pivot off of Jonathan Taylor to get a piece of what should be one of the better offenses. And realistically, if you want to do like a full stack of it, it would be fine playing Wentz with Jonathan Taylor, still getting the chalky part of the offense, then adding Michael Pittman, and you're still getting anything that happens that isn't Taylor, right?
Yep.
I think.
Yeah, I feel the way you just outlined that, I feel the exact same way about Kirk Cousins. Same thing. If Madison's going to be chalk, is play Cousins in a dome. He's actually been better. Yeah, no, I it's funny you bring up. I was going to say the exact same thing if you hadn't about Wentz. I feel the same way about Heineke. Is I know it's always not quote unquote the optimal move or whatever to stack with the running back, but I don't mind stacking Wentz with Jonathan Taylor. If you play Heineke with Gibson, like you're just getting so much of the touchdown equity. Assuming that is McKissick going to play? I have no idea.
No, he actually got ruled out like 20 minutes before we came on here or something. They did say that they asked Ron Rivera about who would take over the McKissick role if they would just give it to Gibson, if they were going to give it to Patterson. And he actually pivoted off of that completely and was talking about Wendell Smallwood. So I don't know how much more work Antonio Gibson gets. I would assume that he's kind of lying with Wendell Smallwood and that Smallwood's not literally just going to play the McKissick role because he doesn't have the same skill set. But it's something that we kind of have to monitor, I think. The only other guy that I quick want to bring up, and I can't even believe that I'm doing this, but the matchup is just so good. And I'm not saying that I want to play him. I want to get your thoughts on this. Assuming he has a healthy or healthier receiver core, let's just say, assuming Kadarius Toney plays. I guess it's unlikely he plays. So let's bring him in. Mike Glennon at 4,000 in tournaments. You're completely off of it, even though Miami gives up the most air yak in the NFL.
Yeah, I get the thought process. I just cannot. I mean, you've seen his neck. Yeah, I just can't. Do that. I don't know. I think if it was like a slate where in cash, at least something, if I was trying to jam in like Jonathan Taylor and CMC and like Cup or something, then maybe. But I just don't think. I don't know. I mean, my only thing is I get it. Like at 4,000, what does he really need to do? I mean, if he puts up 15 points, he's like smash value and everything like that. But number one, that is no guarantee. And number two, I mean, it's hard to like, what is his ceiling? 15 points. I mean, I have no idea, but
yeah, not good.
I don't know.
I guess the big thing for me is it looks like Toney and Sterling Shepard are both out. If they were both playing, I feel like I would have to consider it because Mike Glennon isn't good, obviously, but the Dolphins give up a ton of air yards and they give up a ton of yards after the catch, which means even if Glennon isn't playing well, they can just get Shepard and Toney the ball and watch him go. Same with Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, right? Like if they're giving up so much yak, Mike Glennon doesn't need to do anything, right? He just needs to be able to find a receiver close to the line of scrimmage. But Toney and Shepard do look doubtful.
Yeah, I do like Barkley though.
Barkley, I think Barkley's a good play, and that's a good segue into running back. I think it's very obvious. The three that stick out to me the most are going to be one, Jonathan Taylor against Houston. We already saw him torch them. I think like 140 yards and 2 touchdowns on 14 carries. Houston's defense just isn't good. They can't stop the run. Taylor should do basically whatever he wants again. 2, Alexander Mattison. DraftKings did really well pricing him up. I don't think FanDuel did. And Dalvin Cook officially now, while we were on stream, has been ruled out, which means Mattison will just slot into that workhorse role. And I don't know about you, but I actually believe that Mattison is a very good running back and realistically would be a starter for a lot of teams that didn't have Dalvin Cook. And number 3, also while we were on stream, DeAndre Swift officially ruled out this week. Jamal Williams, who I absolutely love that kid, will be the workhorse. He's hilarious. If you haven't ever seen his interviews or anything, not that he's this like elite player or anything, but I believe the last time the Lions played, he had 20 touches against the Bears on Thanksgiving, right? I mean, you get a workhorse role. He's like 5,300. He doesn't have to be a good player to hit value at that price, right? So
yes,
let's exclude those 3 because those are kind of the big 3, if you would say, for running back this week. And who else are you looking at?
Yeah, I will say one thing. The only thing I was going to say was I agree. I think Madison is probably as good as Cook. That maybe people might think it's a bad take, but
that's a hot take. But I don't dislike it.
No, I mean, I wrote this in my article yesterday. Every time Madison is filled in and had 12 more touches, he's averaging like 135 scrimmage yards. He's so good. I mean, and also in a game versus Detroit, like he could touch the ball 30 times. My favorite. So I wrote this up. I mean, I don't know if this is like almost diving too deep. Eckler is so interesting to me because he doesn't get a lot of rushing and he's always expensive. He kind of reminds me of how like Aaron Jones, I always say, is priced up kind of for his ceiling more than his median. But Eckler is getting 60% of his points just in the receiving game, and the Bengals are giving up the 4th most like running back reception yards and points, everything like that. So I think that's interesting. I think if anything gets popular, it'll be Herbert, Keenan. I don't think Eckler is going to be that owned, so I like him. I think Fournette is going under-owned, which is bizarre to me because people normally chase these big games, but Fournette is, I know now he's going to score 4 touchdowns again, but I have him, being the optimal lineup. I just posted him. I mean, around 18 or 20% of the time, he's only going to be like 12, 14% owned. Atlanta stops negative people. So I think he's really interesting. And then, I don't know. I'm just such a sucker. I mean, I'll go back to Myles Gaskin again. I mean, if nothing else, the usage, he has not been efficient. It's not a secret, but he's at least seen like, I think 20 touches or more. I think I wrote like 4. It was the last 5 or something. And the Giants D, while not good, is like not as bad against the pass as you would think. What I mean by that is they're not like a dumpster fire. They're not good. I'm just saying they're not like horrific. And so maybe, I don't know, we have some more usage there, but I mean, I don't know. Every time I play Gaskin, he screws me, but I do think he rates out well and he has kind of established this semi number 1 player. But I won't mention all the guys. I just want to know your thoughts on, would you play Boston Scott if the other guys are ruled out, even with Hurts, who may be limited? And what is your interest in James Conner taking into account ownership? Are my 2 guys.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Boston Scott question. This is actually weird because everyone thought that Miles Sanders would be a problem. He was a full participant today in practice. Boston Scott did not participate. He's sick.
I saw it's like not COVID, but he like hasn't practiced at all or something.
Yeah. I don't think he's in danger of missing, but it is Friday, and anytime someone doesn't even get a limited practice on Friday, it's like you at least have to question it. So assuming Miles Sanders plays, I'm not going to play Boston Scott. I think that Miles Sanders actually is a decent play, but I don't necessarily know if I want to mess around with him either, just because there are like 50 running backs on the slate that I like. As for Connor, I understand it. I have a hard time playing him at 5,900. It's too cheap for his role, but it's still James Conner.
I know. I agree. Yeah,
it's tough playing someone that isn't that good, but is in such a good role that it doesn't really matter that much. I think the big problem that I'm having is
Eli Mitchell's $100 more.
Eli Mitchell is 6,000. I prefer him. Then obviously you can go down to Jamal Williams, even down there, another guy that I like. And I think this is probably going to depend more on the status of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. They've both officially been ruled game time decisions, which that doesn't seem like it bodes well. I would have assumed that both of them were going to play in this game, wouldn't you have?
I did too. Yeah, I thought Kyler was like definitely going to play. Damn.
That's what I assumed too. But if they're out, David Montgomery at 5,600 against Arizona without Kyler Murray or DeAndre Hopkins, I think makes a lot of sense.
Let it be known also, I have no interest in James Conner if Kyler Murray is not starting. Because then I think he'll get steamed up even more. Like I have him at 19% ownership right now. That might actually be low. I think people are going to gravitate towards him and Mitchell together in cash, and I'm not. No.
Yeah, I can't get behind that. I think the way that it looks with Alexander Mattison obviously projecting for so much ownership, Leonard Fournette is such a good play. I think Cordell Patterson right below him is too, because people, what they do is they look at running back and then they find the matchup against Tampa Bay and then they cross that person off their list. But the problem is Cordell Patterson isn't actually a running back. Like he's going to play plenty of wide receiver. He doesn't need the 20 carries against an elite defense to hit value. And not to say that he can't play running back, but when you look at it, he's scored 20 plus fantasy points multiple times. I think he scored almost 35. All those games, he had under 10 carries. Like that's just not where he's getting most of his value on the season from. So I think that in the matchup, Cordell Patterson is going a little bit overlooked.
Before we move on, the very last guy, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get him this low. It's tough. He has been that great. The O-line is such a disaster. But, I mean, if you're just betting on usage, I mean, Najee Harris is going to be sub 5% owned. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, I actually wrote in my article, this is kind of funny. I wrote to fade Najee Harris. I don't actually like him. I know that the usage is generally there, but I don't know. Unless he scores a touchdown, I think that he's going to struggle a little bit. And Baltimore they're not good against receivers. So I don't think that they're going to, or I would assume at least that Pittsburgh is going to try to force Claypool, try to force Deontay Johnson the ball, and Najee goes a little bit overlooked. I do want to say, if you're looking for pure volume, 58 carries over the last 2 games, Joe Mixon. I mean, this dude, he got a bad rep because he was always hurt.
Yep.
Now he's a workhorse, right?
Yep. And the Chargers' run D is the worst in the league, besides the Jets.
Yeah, they play that 2 deep safety, and they essentially say run the ball until you can run the ball. They're going to play guys back, and then at least early in the game, Joe Mixon's going to get plenty of carries against an opposite, a weak box, I guess you could say. But I think that about does it for running back. I guess the only other guy that I'll mention that we didn't really talk about is Darrell Henderson's only 6,100 and gets a matchup against Jacksonville. It's actually kind of shocking that I'm assuming come Sunday he doesn't go as overlooked as it seems he is, because that's such a good spot. But doesn't it feel like he's a guy that's not really on anyone's radar?
Yeah, I have him at like 15%. That is before I have not updated that one because isn't he dealing potentially with some sort of injury? I hope he carries that Q tag into Sunday because I do think he plays. But I don't think he'll be nearly as owned if people think he's like questionable and it's a late game. But I think he is tremendous play. Obviously, if he's in. I like that call a lot.
Yeah, so he had a thigh injury, I believe, and he hasn't practiced yet this week. I don't think that he has to practice to play, but let's say he gets ruled out. Is there any chance you're playing Sony Michel?
I
mean, he's 4,300.
If Henderson got ruled out, I would probably play Sony Michel in cash, and I probably would not play him in tournaments.
I think that's fair, yeah. I don't think I would use him in tournaments just because what's the true upside of a player like Sony Michel at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't. It's like, he's
moving to what's that?
No, go ahead. I was just talking to myself. Go ahead.
Moving to receiver. Very interesting week. I feel like there are a few chalkier options. One that comes to mind is probably Brandon Ayuk with Deebo Samuel out. He's actually been playing better. He's finally on the field. I know they had that whole weird thing where essentially Kyle Shanahan was recording the data based on how hard everyone's practicing, said that Brandon Ayuk wasn't practicing hard enough for his liking, so he benched him.
What the hell does that even mean? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I'm sorry,
maybe it's a hot take. It's not. Shanahan should be an offensive coordinator. He should not be a head coach. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Fully agree with that. I actually, great offensive mind, not a great head coach.
Not everyone's supposed to be a head coach. That's just the facts. Like they shouldn't. Sorry, you want a hotter take? Sean McVay is not a great head coach either. Anyway, that'll be debated somewhere else. Yeah. There's something else I say that stinks is that like Ayuk, I loved anyway, but now that Deebo Samuel is out, he could be like way more owned than I originally thought, which sucks because like I thought he was a great play with Deebo in, but now not he's not a bad play now, but I see him getting popular. I think bad chalk in my opinion is Hunter Renfrow. Not that he's like a bad play. If he's going to be really really popular, I just don't love. I'm talking tournaments. I mean. Just low ADOT, a lot of PPR, especially. I mean, on FanDuel, I don't think he's worth it. It's hard to see, what he just. I don't know if he has like a 30-point game, even against a bad team. It's just tough to see him like breaking the slate. Is one guy. I mean, I would rather play Pittman. T. Higgins is still too cheap.
Brandon Cooks is right around the same price. I know that.
Yeah, I never play Cooks. So the reason I feel like he's always more owned than I have him projected for. He's obviously a great player. It's just with that team, just hard. He is under 6K though, and he gets 8 targets a game. If I could just move up, my favorite play by far is Justin Jefferson. I don't know how he's not going more owned. I think he's the best play on the slate. I love Terry McLaurin at low ownership off the Gibson chalk. I mean, oh my God. The thing about McLaurin is he's so boomer bust that you're paying and you'll get burned a lot, but he does have like the 30-plus point game in him, but sometimes for some reason he gets like 2 catches for 18 yards. But I think he's a great play. I have zero interest in Thielen at 7,300. There's nothing that could get me to play on at 7,300. I'm so sick of Adam Thielen.
Adam Thielen is just the guy that everyone wants not to be good and is just consistently good. I love him.
It's so true. It's so true. No, you're not wrong.
I think you're on to it though in the dome game. That's got to be Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's cheaper than Kupp, more expensive than Allen. I think Kupp is going to be 18 to 20. I think Keenan's going to be 15 to 20, and you have Jefferson just right there. I mean, I think he's a great spend up. I guess I'll ask you about guys I expect to be cheap-ish chalk. I am not playing Juwan Jennings at 3,100 at 10% owned. I'm just not.
That's where you draw the line?
That's just silly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you think – I don't know. I mean, what's his upside?
I think I think he'll see enough at 3,100 to hit value, definitely. Seattle's defense isn't really good, but I would also expect that Eli Mitchell is they're just gonna pound the rock over and over and over.
Exactly. And why isn't Mitchell hit the ball 30 times? Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. If they have, it's all going to depend probably honestly on the first quarter. If they have success with Mitchell in the first quarter where they get even like 1 to 2 scores, they're going to hand it to him over, and they're just going to keep doing it because Seattle's not good against the run. If Seattle comes out and spends their entire week game planning against Eli Mitchell and they just send everyone to stop the run, that's when I think that something like Brandon Ayuk goes crazy. Juwan Jennings really could do well in that type of a situation. But if you're already using Brandon Ayuk in cash, I can't imagine using 2 San Francisco receivers and then not pairing with Jimmy Garoppolo. And there's a 0% chance I'm willing to use Jimmy Garoppolo in cash, right?
Right. That's my whole issue with Jamal Williams. I think Jamal Williams could be bad chalk. Not that he's bad. I just think he could be overowned. And I'm like, we're going to play Jamal Williams and Josh Reynolds in cash. 2 Lions. I mean, like, come on. No.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it comes down to roster construction too, because when you look at the type of plays that there are, say you move down to someone like even like Derek Carr. Let's just say you go Derek Carr. You're already saving with Foster Moreau. You get the pair there, which kind of bumps it up a little bit. Then you're obviously spending on Jonathan Taylor. But if you move down to Jamal Williams, that's cheap. If you play Brandon Ayuk, that's still mid price, under 6K. Why would you need to drop down and play essentially a 3K receiver? You just won't have to.
Well, the only difference there being that we do have Zay Jones at 32.
I can't listen. I
Dude,
actually
Derek
I
Carr-
liked Zay Jones coming out of college. I thought he was really good. I can't imagine playing Foster Moreau and Zay Jones in the same lineup, though. I
with
can't do
Derek
it.
Carr, then play everyone. Actually, to be honest, the GOAT stack of the week is Carr, Moreau, and Deshaun Jackson. But we can get to that.
I actually don't. I think that's good.
I mean, like, people are just not ready to embrace, like, just like Deshaun Jackson, probably near 50-50 of the time, may get you a 0. But that other 50% of the time, he's going to get like 3 catches
30.
for 198 yards. Yeah.
One guy that I do really want to talk about here that I think is honestly, he is becoming arguably my favorite play on the entire slate is Deontay Johnson. And there's 2 reasons for it. One, he doesn't have a crazy ADOT. It's slightly under 10. I think it's 9.8. But he does have the highest percentage share of team air yards, which is slightly above Chase Claypool, who I will also say is another elite play. The big thing about Deontay Johnson, though, is that anyone that watches him knows how good he is with the ball in his hands. He's elite after the catch. And the way that they get him the ball, it's in situations where he can contribute after the catch. It's not like he immediately should be tackled and he's doing something. His expected yards after the catch per reception, I think, is like 5.3 or something. It's really, really high. And he gets a matchup against the Ravens, who have allowed the second most yak in the NFL this season. And the only team that's allowed more is Dallas, who obviously played on Thursday. So you need to get the playmakers the ball. That's what they're going to do. And I also think that that's what they're going to do with Chase Claypool, who full participant today. He looks as if he's over his toe injury. I actually think that using Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson is really good. I just don't want to play Ben Roethlisberger.
So let it be known, I played Big Ben last week. Yeah, he threw those picks. He wasn't. I mean, from ETR, Mike Leone, he played Roethlisberger in the dome and won it, that takes some balls. But I mean, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of I've done this before in previous weeks where, not to say, but it could be this with the passing game if they're going to be down, but you play Deontay and Claypool, hope they get the touchdowns without Ben, because not like Ben might not be the highest scoring player. He might only throw 3 touchdowns, but they all 3 go to them or something, and maybe he only throws for 200 yards. But in the same game, I mean, my favorite play on the slate besides Justin Jefferson is Marquise Brown. I mean, his usage he is averaging like over 12 targets a game over the last 4 games. Like, what is that? I mean, no one on the Steelers. I think Joe Hayden's going to be out, and he's old anyway. I think Lamar is going to have even more time because TJ Watt is out. Marquise Brown. I mean, when I think of legitimately, I've been overusing that term this pod, slate breaker, like Marquise Brown in this range is the guy who I'm like, if there's someone I had to bet someone's going to get 40 points, it would be Marquise Brown. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think it's such a good bring back because obviously we both like Lamar Jackson. So if you want to use Lamar Jackson with Hollywood and then bring it back with either Deontay or Claypool, I think you probably choose one of the two. If you want to use Ben Roethlisberger with both of them and bring it back with Hollywood, I think that's actually really reasonable. And one of the bigger things that you kind of have to take into consideration is Roethlisberger's 5K. He doesn't need 30 fantasy points to be a top option. So I do think that that's really smart. Another guy that I like quite a bit on the slate, and he's been breaking out recently, is Darnell Mooney. I didn't mention Justin Fields at quarterback. I do actually really like Fields as a tournament option this week. That's obviously assuming that he's starting. He's looked better in his last 2 games prior to getting hurt. And Arizona's not a defense that I'm overly scared of. I feel like Fields could come with quite a bit of rushing potential in this particular matchup. And then you obviously compare him with someone like Darnell Mooney, who is just been a target monster. I know Allen Robinson comes back this week, right? And
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Or I don't think they're really playing for now. I think they're more or less gearing up for the future, and I think that means turning Darnell Mooney into the one and Allen Robinson taking the backseat role as he probably leaves in the offseason. So do you have interest in Mooney, or am I kind of reaching?
I do. No, he's in my list. I don't know. This sounds so stupid because he's worse, but like I almost like Mooney better if Dalton's out there chucking the ball, because at least like Dalton is seemingly Nagy allows him to actually throw the ball downfield, whereas Field I guess is banned from doing that. But I like Mooney. No, I mean he's so good, and I mean we saw in that Thanksgiving game. Sorry to just mention this, but yeah, I mean like he didn't even score, but he had like 130 yards receiving or something. I mean he can just really produce even on a bad team. My only problem with Mooney is that I can get T. Higgins for $200 more. And of the 9 games that Jamar Chase and Higgins have played and Boyd, Higgins actually has more targets. So let's discuss that.
That's crazy because Jamar Chase has been so good, right? And
just so efficient. It's gone down a little bit, and all of a sudden, I mean, his ADOT, Jamar Chase is just insane. I mean, it's crazy.
For what it's worth, though, T. Higgins, if you told me, so obviously Jamar Chase is the wide receiver 1 on that team, right? But if you told me that instead of drafting Jamar Chase, they were going to draft Penei Sewell, and their reasoning was because they thought T. Higgins was a wide receiver 1, and that's what they were rolling with, I wouldn't have even slightly second guessed it. I would have been like, cool, makes sense. T. Higgins is a wide receiver 1. It just so happens that Jamar Chase is better. But you can have 2 elite receivers. That's never stopped anyone. And Burrow throws the ball a ton, right? So I love it. I think it's really good. Is there anyone else I guess before we get into the final plays, I do want to ask you about one player because I'm considering playing him, and I'm not considering playing him necessarily based on matchup or anything like that. I feel like I'm considering it almost purely on narrative, which I virtually never do, but it feels like this is the kind of time. DK Metcalf does get a matchup against San Francisco where we assume that Seattle's going to be losing, so they should be throwing the ball. Has not been good, but he just had 4 targets where people have kind of badmouthed Seattle's game planning in the media and stuff, and they came out and said we need to get Metcalf more involved. Do you have interest in him? Do you think that's actually a thing, or do you think they're just kind of saying what people want to hear and then they're going to go back to doing the weird stuff that Seattle does where they don't care about anything?
And like sign Adrian Peterson. I mean, okay, so first of all, it's funny that you said that because I literally have DK Metcalf in my player pool and I literally put a question mark next to him because I don't know what I want to do. I totally agree. I mean, I talk about the guys with the ball potential like Marquise Brown. I mean, that's what DK Metcalf is. He can shred the slate. It just, oh my God. They finally even showed it on national TV. I mean, their plays and how slow and how few plays they run, it's just literally limiting the upside of every single person. I mean, I think Metcalf is interesting. I don't mind him as a one-off, especially if you have him, or you can like late swap onto him if you're trailing and no one's going to own him. But it's tough because I would want to play like if Metcalf has a big game. I feel like Russ would probably play well, but I just do not trust Pete Carroll whatsoever, and I just don't know if. I mean, I don't know.
I agree. I know exactly what you're saying by this.
It's just annoying. I mean, but the reason he's such a good play is because Godwin, who I like, I'm sure you do too, will be extremely popular just below him. Mike Evans is a great play at the same price. Deontay Johnson will be popular right there, so no one's going to own him, and he has literally the exact same and or greater ceiling of all of those guys, but he has the shittiest coach, so that's a problem.
Yep. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I just wanted to get your thoughts because I feel like this should be the spot where DK Metcalf goes crazy, and I also just can't trust it. What other receivers are you looking at? I have a few yet that we haven't talked about, but kind of just a few extra ones that you're looking at before we move on to tight end.
I had some interest early in the week in Marvin Jones. I've less now. He's going to be chalky. My reason, I still like him. He had a 31% air yard share, and that was with Dan Arnoldin, and the ball's got to go somewhere. That being said, if he's going to have like Ramsey on him, have fun. I don't really see what's going to happen there. But the only other guy I'll mention, just so I don't name literally everyone on the slate, is Rashad Bateman. I still think is a strong play. It's tough to see, I guess, because we don't know yet, is, mega upside if it's there or not. But I think he's definitely solidified as a number 2. He is a big discount, not only in price, but ownership from Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. And I think he makes sense as kind of a strong P. I think, would you play Bateman in cash? I think you could if you wanted to. I probably won't, but I think you could. I don't know.
I probably wouldn't personally, just because I feel like there's so many good plays. But I do like Rashad Bateman. I think that he's a good play. I just don't know if cash is the way I go with him.
Yeah, those are the two guys. I'm not playing Chenault. I know if Ben was here, he'd recommend, but Chenault just Urban Meyer hates him.
Loves him.
Why? I don't know why Urban Meyer hates him, but he does.
I'll add a few more guys that we haven't really talked about. Michael Pittman Jr. I feel like that guy is a little more obvious. We touched on him a little bit, but it does make sense. Elijah Moore and on the other side, Devonta Smith. I think both of them are in play specifically for the matchup. I just worry about Philly getting a big lead and then just running out the ball for the rest of the game. That's a major concern, but those are 2 tournament plays. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at the Rams, if Odell Beckham Jr. is playing, I do think that he's a fine option. 10 targets last week. I have no problems with him in a matchup against
Talk about the real wide receiver too. Van
Jefferson.
Yeah.
If Odell is out, bump up Van Jefferson. For what it's worth, if Odell plays, you can also use Van Jefferson. I think he had either 8 or 9 targets last week, right?
He did. Yeah. I think he's still the number 2. If nothing else, like just because he's been on the team more. I don't know. Odell is so annoying. Get him. I can't stand him.
I think other options that you can use, and this is probably going to come back and bite me when he scores literally 2 fantasy points like he does every single week. But Kenny Golladay, don't get me wrong, I don't like Mike Glennon. Mike Glennon's not good. The problem is Golladay gets the matchup against the Dolphins. They allow a ridiculous amount of air yards. They allow a ridiculous amount of yards after the catch. Golladay should soak up so many targets without Tony or Sterling Shepard. I know some people be like Darius Slayton. I'm not really a huge Slayton guy. I think he's solid, but I was never really as high on him as most people were. I think that Golladay is still a very solid receiver. I don't think he's kind of the guy that most people expected he was going to be when he left the Lions. But the pure upside.
I can assure all of you that I have played enough Darius Slayton to last a lifetime. You're not missing out on Darius Slayton, so don't worry about that. You're not.
I actually last year I had a bet going with someone that I know. They bet that Darius Slayton would outscore Deontay Johnson, which now seems ridiculous. But before the season, they were essentially one person off in terms of ADP, which is why we made the bet. And I was a Deontay Johnson. I've been a truther for Deontay Johnson since basically he got drafted. I love that kid.
He's such a stud.
People always worried about the drops too, and now he has like 109 targets this year and 0 drops. It's
remember how Jamar Chase was dropping in preseason? He was all of a sudden bad.
Yeah. DK Metcalf, when he was a rookie, I think he led the rookies in drops with like 6 or 7. Turns out it doesn't actually matter, and drops are pretty unpredictable.
Yeah.
But
honestly.
I think that's enough players. We can move to tight end. This will probably go relatively quick because Foster Moreau is your guy. Use him. It's the chances that he busts are so low.
And also, if he does bust, at least in cash, it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah, doesn't even slightly hurt you. In cash games, you're using Foster Moreau. In tournaments, there are some other options. So, Sam, break down some guys that you're looking at tight end this week.
For me, it's pretty clear cut. If I'm paying up, I like Mark Andrews a lot. I probably would only play him stacking with Lamar. I tend to try to get, for the most part, my tight end stack. But if it's not Andrews, I think Gronk is, for some reason, was really chalk last week. and now is in the same role and not even $1,000 more and not going to be like half the ownership. I think Gronk his efficiency this year is something to be admired. It's insane. Who knows how much longer it'll go, but I like those two. And then I'm going to go back to Pat Freiermuth. He had that concussion thing, but he practiced in full yesterday. He's fine. Ebron's out. Baltimore has given up the most fantasy points on average to tight ends. And as we agree on, I'm pretty sure Baltimore defense sucks. And Freiermuth I don't know. I think he's consistent. I don't think he'll be very owned. And so those are the three guys besides Moreau I'm probably considering. The only other guy I'd say is Jack Doyle has kind of been playing more snaps lately. But I don't know.
Killed it with Gronk and Freiermuth. I think both are really good. Here's something that you probably wouldn't have known had I not said it. Pat Freiermuth on the season, even though he didn't play for a while, is a tight end 1. He ranks 11th in scoring for tight end.
You love to see it.
He's a touchdown machine. It's all he's ever done his entire career. Ben has been on him for probably since the kid was like 5 or 6 years old. I don't know.
I mean, his red zone target share is 26%.
It's crazy.
Deontay Johnson is still like the main target, and Najee's there, and he's still seeing that many red. I mean,
The other guys that I'll add, I do believe that there are a few, but there's 2 guys that really stick out at this point. One, Logan Thomas.
Don't say Cole Kmet.
I'm not saying Cole Kmet.
I like Logan Thomas a lot.
Logan Thomas is, prior to his injury, he was over 5K. Now he's at 4,000. Gets a matchup against Las Vegas, who struggles against tight ends. Does not even have an injury designation anymore, and people still aren't playing him. It makes no sense to me. I think that he's a really good option. And then if you need to save some salary, 500 cheaper is Evan Ingram. Obviously, he's more of a receiver than a tight end. You have essentially 2 of the top receivers that play similar roles because they're slot guys in Sterling Shepard and Kadarius Toney, both unlikely to play. That gives Evan Ingram even more snaps in the slot. And he also gets the matchup against the Dolphins, who are just atrocious against the pass. So Evan Ingram is another guy that makes a lot of sense this week, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to recommend him because no one should play him. I don't know why I play Jared Cook as part of my Charger stack every week. He's so bad, but I don't know. He's still seeing like 4 to 5 targets. I mean, basically, you do need him to catch a touchdown, which he doesn't always do. But I don't know. I think he's an interesting part of his stack. It's always cheap if you want to play like Herbert, Keenan, and Cook, and then like if you want to play Jamar Chase, save some salary, but he sucks.
I think that's fine. I think on essentially in the same game on the other side and basically the same price tag, CJ Uzomah, Ben would be super proud that I'm recommending him. I think he's kind of interesting at least. So
my only recommendation, I think I've said this before, is I just do not play Foster Moreau as like a singular punt in tournaments. Just don't do it. If you're gonna play
I think you can move off of it.
But do not just it's gonna be so.
I think that's smart. We can move to stacks now. Talk about kind of our favorite stacks of the slate. Who are you looking at? I guess more in tournaments because you're not really stacking all that much in cash this season.
No. I mean, I would say I mentioned a lot. My favorite's Baltimore. I think given the season, I think it's always still stuck in people's mind. You can't double stack Lamar, which I disagree with. I'm not saying a single stack is bad, but you can definitely double stack. I do like, obviously, the Bucks. My hot takes, I don't know. I'm trying to get better at not, like, this sounds counterintuitive, not over-correlating. I think I may stack the Bucks and not have a run back. I know Matt, and he's won a lot more money than me and is way sharper than me, but he likes Russell Gage. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think you need to force a bring back on that one if you don't want to. And then, I don't know, I like that game, but I actually think we've talked through it and I'm just looking at ownership and everything like that, I think actually the Washington stack is a little more interesting to me than the Vegas side. I think the Vegas side is probably the quote-unquote sharper one. It makes more sense. But I do like Washington a lot, along with Baltimore and Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think if you're stacking Washington, one cool thing that you could do, or I guess one kind of game theory thing that you could do is essentially stack Taylor Heineke with Antonio Gibson and Terry McLaurin, you get basically all their production essentially outside of the tight end, which they do use a tight end quite a bit, but you just kind of need to have your guys be the ones to score and stuff, and then bring it back with Foster Moreau. You get the cheap tight end, you get the exposure to the high-owned chalky guy, but in the same game, you get the other side that's going to be significantly less owned.
Yeah, not too much. I mean, I don't know. I like that. I mean, Gibson, and also with, McKissick out, that's enormous. But also, I mean, the fact that, Gibson is seeing, like, he still sees a decent amount of targets. I mean, last game, I think he had 7. I think he caught all of them. The week before, I mean, it's kind of, that was maybe a spike week. But even if it's not last week, and that's all when McKissick been in, he's seen, between 2 to 4. So I love that. That 3-man stack is definitely one I'll have. Maybe my main team. Not my main team. That's ridiculous.
I think there's other spots that make a lot of sense, though, like where you can stack to use chalk and get off of it. One of them we already talked about, Carson Wentz, Jonathan Taylor, and Michael Pittman. Another one, you can use Kirk Cousins, Alexander Mattison, Justin Jefferson, or Adam Thielen if you really want to. I prefer Jefferson at this point. You can do other stuff where you stack essentially, say, Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, bring it back with chalky Keenan Allen. It's there's a lot of different ways to go. You can stack up the Rams, who Cooper Kupp and Darrell Henderson are both projecting to get ownership. Add in Matt Stafford, and all of a sudden you now have the low-owned quarterback to go with them. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go. I think my favorite one currently would probably be, I think I like the Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, bring it back with Keenan Allen, or you could actually even bring it back with Austin Eckler, and I think that would be interesting.
That's a nice live. It's a real nice live.
I mean, that's a lot. This podcast has been roughly an hour, so we're going to give bold calls and get out of here. Sam, hit us with a bold call for this week.
My bold call will be it's a bold call based on how I feel about the slate, so that's how I'm kind of cheating it. But I think the Ravens Steelers game shoots out with each team scoring at least 4 touchdowns each.
I like that. Piggybacking off of it, my bold call is that Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson combined for over 250 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Claypool is such an elite pivot. It's insane. Yep. He might be 2% owned. I get that Deontay, but man, he's going to be so owned. Yeah. So
good about that. Also on the stacks, Ben Roethlisberger, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. You can even add Pat Freiermuth in there if you want. Don't stack all of them. Choose 2, and then bring it back with some Baltimore guys. But again, if you want all of our free content, dfskarma.com, any of our core plays and everything, dfskarma.com/pricing. Chat DFS to get into our free Discord. That's about all we have for this week. We will be back next week, but good luck this week. Hopefully all of your screens are green.